정신 건강에 좋은 것 같아요. 호흡을 참고 들어가지만 나한테 집중해서 내가 릴렉스를 해야지만 편안하게 다이빙을 할 수 있기 때문에 정신 건강 또 정신 건강으로 인해서 몸이 더 건강하고 편해지고 하는 것들.
이제는 딥탱크가 이렇게 많이 생겨서 예전과는 다르게 바다를 가지 않아도 깊은 수심을 즐길 수 있는 게 대한민국 프리다이버의 특권이라고 생각하거든요. 그래서 재밌게 즐길 수 있고 그리고 배워두면 해외여행 갈 때 너무 좋다.
진짜 한국에선 어떻게 먹는지 알려줄까?
K-바비큐? 신김치랑 먹어야지.
치킨? 치맥 페스티벌은 처음이지?
김치? 종류만큼 먹는 법도 가지각색.
김밥? 시장에선, 산에선, 바다에선 이렇게.
국밥? 취향 따라, 입맛 따라.
이런 한국, 와보지 않고는 모를걸? 요즘 한국에선 어떻게 노는지 알려줄까?
한국에선 아이돌이 되어볼 수도 인생 번호를 찾을 수도 있지. 제일 핫한 포토스팟은 여기. 한국은 분명 너에게 새로운 영감을 줄 거야.
이런 한국, 와보지 않고는 모를걸?
bounce it, we just bounce it, sidelines on this Thursday, December 12th, here in South Korea. In a televised address earlier this morning, President Yoon denied allegations of rebellion, claiming that the decision to declare martial law on the 3rd of December was an act of governance. And in a rare display of unity, both ruling and opposition lawmakers have denounced the president's defense of his brief martial law imposition and denial of any wrongdoing aimed at harming national stability. Meanwhile, the main liberal opposition Democratic Party of Korea looks to submit a new impeachment motion against the president in the near future amid plans to put the motion up for a fresh floor vote this coming Saturday.
Breaking days of silence following last Saturday's public apology for causing concern, President Yoon addressed the nation again earlier this morning to defend his brief imposition of martial law. Our correspondent Oh Seong is standing by live at the top office. Seong, let's start with details of his actual address.
Sure, Sunny. Thanks for inviting me. Well, first of all, the president, in his sudden 29-minute speech given on Tuesday morning, he vowed to fight until the end against forces that he said threatened the country's future, and he really defended his decision to impose martial law on December 3rd. He called it a political decision that was made under the president's legal authority.
거대 야당이 헌법상 권한을 남용하여 위헌적 조치들을 계속 반복했지만 저는 헌법의 틀 내에서 대통령의 권한을 행사하기로 했습니다. 그 목적은 국민들에게 거대 야당의 반국가적 패악을 알려 이를 멈추도록 경고하는 것이었습니다. 그럼으로써 자유민주주의 헌정 질서의 붕괴를 막고 국가 기능을 정상화하고자 하였습니다.
Yoon argued that he'd ordered only a small group of unarmed troops to enter the National Assembly and that they were called to immediately withdraw when Parliament overturned the martial law decree. He said he hadn't intended to shut down Parliament, saying that if he had, then power and water supplies would have been cut off and live broadcasts of the parliamentary session would have been restricted. Such rhetoric comes as investigators close in on the president for charges of insurrection. He's the only sitting Korean leader to have been placed under a travel ban. Citing repeated attempts to impeach him and his officials throughout his presidency by the opposition, Yoon blamed the opposition party, which holds a majority in parliament, for paralysing the functions of government and claimed they have been rejecting the results of the presidential election that voted him into office. He warned that if opposition forces come to power, the country's law and order would collapse, future economic growth engines would wither, and the South Korea-US alliance, as well as their trilateral cooperation with Japan, would once again collapse. North Korea, he said, would further develop its nuclear weapons and missiles, posing a more serious threat to Korean people's lives. Now, this speech seems to be a clear indication that the president will challenge efforts to charge and impeach him for imposing martial law, demonstrating that he's not willing to step down.
Right, Seong, and staying with that, I understand his address also included intentions to put up a legal battle.
That's right, Sonia. So according to legal and political sources, his aides have been reaching out to legal professionals, including former secretaries for the presidential office with legal backgrounds and also lawyers from prestigious law firms. And this comes amid reports that the presidential office has already conveyed Yoon's position that he would rather face impeachment than step down voluntarily. Apparently that's been conveyed to the ruling People Power Party already. And if the opposition's motion to impeach him passes this Saturday, the Constitutional Court has up to 180 days to issue a ruling, and another presidential election must be held within 60 days of that. This could prolong the required period for a new presidential election to be called to as long as 8 months, compared to the 2 or 3 months to call a snap election if Yoon opts for resignation. If Parliament impeaches him this week, then Yoon and his team will have to counter both the insurrection charges and the impeachment proceedings simultaneously. So then the key questions would be whether there was an intent to undermine the constitutional order and also whether his actions amount to the degree of insurrection.
Right, I see. All right, Seong, thank you for that report. That was our Oh Seong reporting live from the presidential office. Now, the response from political parties to the president's latest public address has been prompt. In a rash of unity, both the ruling People Power Party and the opposition Democratic Party of Korea have denounced the president's denial of wrongdoing. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon joins me on the line. Do-yeon, let's begin with the remarks from the ruling party then.
Sonny, it seems like even some, if not the majority of the ruling People Power Party lawmakers were shocked and at disbelief at what was said this morning. The chair of the PPP, Han Kang, said that President Yoon showed no will to end this term early, but instead showed his will to fight the political situation. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
The address this morning will not be tolerated by the public. And from the perspective of democracy, we cannot accept the President's statement. Therefore, as the party leader, I assert that our party must take the initiative in promptly and lawfully suspending the President's duties.
So now with Chairman Han saying this, it'll be likely that the impeachment motion will be passed. Lawmakers individually have been coming out to openly support impeachment. There were 5 PPP lawmakers who were for impeachment, but following President Yoon's speech, 2 more have joined, making it 7 in favor. Now, last week, it only needed 8 members from the 108 PPP members to pass the threshold of 200 votes to impeach. But with Cho Kuk, the chair of the Rebuilding Korea Party, having lost his job after being sentenced to 2 years in prison, this makes it 191 total opposition lawmakers. So it may take 9 PPP members to pass the 200. Having said that, the new floor leader who was voted into the job earlier today for the PPP, Kwon Sun-dong, said that the party's consensus at this point is against impeachment, but he will discuss it further with other members.
Right, Do-yeon, and I believe more words of indignation were shared by the opposition party as well in the meantime.
That's right, Sonny. They were quick to criticize the address. The main opposition went as far as to say the address showed his, quote, mental status. Take a listen to one of the leaders at DP early this morning.
The statement that to protect the Constitution he planned a failed martial law that goes against the Constitution and the law is the expression of his extreme delusion, an admission of illegal martial law, and a declaration of war against the public. It is a preemptive incitement of far-right unrest, as if preparing for impeachment by prematurely presenting the Constitutional Court's arguments.
Other DP lawmakers also joined in criticizing, with some even saying that the vote for impeachment shouldn't be delayed until Saturday. In the meantime, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Woo Won-sik, called on leaders of political parties to meet to discuss the ongoing situation following the address as well. He said, declaring martial law to warn the National Assembly is something that can be never tolerated in a democratic constitutional order. That's all for now. Back to you, Sunny.
All right, and thank you for that coverage. That was our Kim Do-yeon with the response from the political arena to the president's defiance of martial law. Meanwhile, at the Parliament, proceedings are underway to ensure separate probes into the president and the First Lady and a new impeachment vote this coming Saturday. For more on this, our National Assembly correspondent Lee Si-hoo is on the line as well. First, Si-hoo, I hear a number of special probe bills have been passed. Do tell us more.
Right, Sunny. 2 opposition-led bills seeking to prompt special counsel to investigate President Yoon on insurrection charges and his declaration of martial law on the night of December 3rd, and another on 15 allegations surrounding First Lady Kim, including her alleged involvement in stock price manipulation case, have been approved this afternoon. The president's prosecution bill passed 195 to 86 with 2 abstentions among 283 present lawmakers in the meeting, and the First Lady's 195 to 85 with 2 abstentions among the 282 present at the time. This is despite the ruling People Power Party deciding as the consensus of the party to disapprove the bills. President Yoon's prosecution bill is separate from the previous one passed earlier this week. This is a more comprehensive, regular special counsel bill with fewer restrictions on the period of time and organization of the council. Now, this was the opposition's fourth attempt at passing the First Lady's prosecution bill, which has been vetoed by the president 3 times before and returned to the National Assembly for revotes, where it failed to meet the requirement for a second approval. Some 40 prosecutors may be chosen for the special counsel to investigate President Yoon for a maximum of 150 days, but the president himself has to appoint the members of the team, first recommended by the opposition. Furthermore, the nation's prosecution, the police, and the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials must comply with the request by the special counsel as well.
Right, I see. Meanwhile, also this afternoon at the Parliamentary, impeachment motions against 2 government officials were passed, I believe.
Yes, the Assembly also voted today to approve the motions to impeach Justice Minister Park Sung-jae and the National Police Agency's Commissioner General Cho Kuk for their alleged involvement and for not having gone further to prevent the declaration of martial law during the meeting with President Yoon on the night of declaration. With the approval, their duties have been suspended immediately. Now they await a final decision by the Constitutional Court of Korea.
Shiu, where do we stand with the impeachment motion against the president? There is talk about the opposition party taking more time to fine-tune this particular motion.
That is correct. The DP just announced half an hour ago that it will reintroduce the impeachment motion on President Yoon at 5:30 this evening. The party had intended to go through the procedure yesterday, but said it needed to take more time to strengthen the reasonings for impeachment and also add new allegations that are being named. But the voting day does remain fixed to 5 p.m. this Saturday, unchanged. Sunny?
Right, that would be December the 14th. All right, Shiu, thank you for that coverage and do keep us posted. That was our Shiu reporting on the latest from the Parliament. Now, police officers reportedly returned to the presidential office today in Yongsan, while law enforcement agencies have agreed to work together to allow for an efficient investigation into the events leading up to last week's brief martial law. Our Kim Jong-sil has the latest.
Police investigating the December 3rd martial law crisis arrived at the presidential office on Thursday to gather additional materials. The National Office of Investigation sent officers to secure documents related to the declaration of martial law voluntarily submitted by the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Meanwhile, prosecutors have re-questioned Lieutenant General Yeo In-young, head of the Defense Counterintelligence Command, over allegations of treason and abuse of power. There are growing expectations that they may soon request his arrest. Additionally, in a bid to streamline overlapping probes, the country's top investigative agencies held their first joint meeting on Thursday. Their goal is to coordinate efforts and resolve inefficiencies in the ongoing investigation into the controversial martial law declaration. In a related development, the Defense Ministry has suspended Army Chief of Staff Park Han-soo, who served as martial law commander during the crisis. Park has been reassigned to a metropolitan unit while investigations proceed, with the second operational commander temporarily filling his role. Meanwhile, prosecutors have also summoned Health Minister Cho Kuk for questioning about his involvement in a cabinet meeting held before martial law was declared. He's the first minister to face questioning in the case. Unification Minister Kim Yong-ho also received a summons for questioning from the National Office of Investigation, but has delayed cooperating, citing the need to monitor how the multiple ongoing probes are organized. Separately, a special police team requested arrest warrants for National Police Agency Commissioner General Cho Ji-ho and Seoul Metropolitan Police Agency Chief Kim Bong-sik. They are facing charges of treason under the criminal law. Both are accused of restricting lawmakers' access to the National Assembly on December 3rd. Cho Ji-ho reportedly told investigators he received direct orders from President Yoon Suk-yeol, including instructions to detain lawmakers, but claimed he refused to carry them out. The police team confirmed that, contrary to earlier statements made at the National Assembly, the two met with President Yoon and former Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun hours before the martial law declaration to discuss related matters. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff has called on the military to maintain political neutrality. The remarks to this end were made at a meeting on this Thursday, attended by relevant authorities to reaffirm the military's readiness posture amid what sources say is a leadership vacuum at the Defense Ministry. Chairman Kim Myung-soo also underscored the military's priority to protect the people and to uphold its alliance with the U.S. In other news, there have been some tangible signs of stability in the stock market as the government continues to maintain a close eye on daily trade. Our correspondent Moon Hae-ryun reports.
South Korea's market turbulence is beginning to stabilize following the short-lived martial law order last Tuesday, as investigations make headway and financial authorities respond to the situation. In the days following President Yoon Suk-yeol's declaration of martial law and the subsequent lifting of it, the country's stock market and currency plummeted to multi-year lows amid a prolonged impeachment standoff. The benchmark Kospi dipped well below the 2,400 mark this Monday to its lowest in over a year, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq closed at its lowest in nearly 5 years. Individual investors in particular sold a total of more than 1 trillion Korean won on the same day, nearly $700 million in net sales across the two markets. The Korean won also fell against the greenback to its lowest in more than 2 years. But over the past few days, the stock market showed signs of stabilization as the Kospi and Nasdaq closed up for a third consecutive trading session on Thursday. This comes as South Korea's finance ministry and the central bank continue to maintain their emergency response systems and engage in active foreign economic diplomacy. Since the shock declaration last Tuesday night, finance authorities have held daily emergency meetings, assessing the day-to-day situation and discussing contingency plans. After declaring that they were ready to deploy unlimited liquidity, the central bank began special repo operations to raise short-term capital, while a stock market stabilization fund and an around-the-clock task force are on standby. A key focus of the government's efforts to stabilize the economy has been to relay the strength of the country's economic fundamentals to international agencies and foreign finance leaders. This has come about through interviews with foreign media outlets such as the Nikkei and The Economist, as well as diplomatic meetings with foreign ambassadors. International credit ratings remain stable, highlighting Finance Minister Che's claim that the impact of the martial law incident has been limited on the South Korean economy.
Even though we had martial law, the real economy, production and exports are not really affected at all. So there's no reason to cut the credit ratings right now.
With next year's economic growth projections revised down by major institutions prior to the martial law incident, experts maintain that the looming threat of Trump's protectionist policies on South Korean exports could have a more lasting effect. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
And the U.S. hopes nobody will seek to take advantage of the political turmoil here in South Korea. The remark was shared by Deputy Press Secretary of the Defense Department, Sabrina Singh, in response to question about potential provocations by North Korea. She also reaffirmed that communication channels between Seoul and Washington were active in spite of the political strife here. She further claimed that a democratic political process was underway in the country. And back here in Korea, minor opposition party leader Cho Kuk has been sentenced to 2 years in prison for academic fraud and bribery. This latest ruling by the Supreme Court upholds that of the Seoul Central District Court that found Cho guilty of leveraging his influence to secure academic favors for his children and for receiving 6 million won in the form of their scholarships. As a result, Cho will lose his legislative seat and be barred from partaking in elections for 5 years. Author Han Kang sat down with members of the Korean media one day after the Nobel Prize award to share her thoughts regarding the global recognition and more. Our culture correspondent Song Yoo-jin was there.
For Han Kang, this year's Nobel laureate in literature, winning was a chance to reflect on how far she's come.
Writing my Nobel lecture really made me reflect on my past. It helped me figure out my coordinates, where I am now, and how far I've come. It gave me a clear understanding of my journey and a better sense of the path ahead.
Han's life story was given another chapter throughout this year's Nobel Week. When asked about her most memorable moment, it wasn't the grand award ceremony or banquet.
This morning, I visited a library where students sang songs, shared poems they'd written, and discussed my novels. One student wrote a poem inspired by my short story, The Fruit of My Woman, imagining herself as a tomato and saying, "I'd be tasteless, so please don't eat me." It was both funny and unforgettable.
The author also took the time to discuss her works, specifically how the Swedish Academy awarded her the Nobel Prize for her ability to, quote, expose the fragility of human life.
I aim to capture the incredible complexity of human life in my writing. My characters often face inner conflicts, vulnerabilities, and contradictions. I believe these elements reflect reality and are a more natural representation of humans.
But her works couldn't have touched the hearts of readers worldwide without good translation. Han expressed heartfelt gratitude to the translators, the hidden heroes who brought her books to life in 28 languages.
Some translators I've met, but many I haven't. Yet, through our shared work, we are connected. I am deeply grateful to them. I also hope that the works of more Korean authors will be translated, not for arrears, but to reach more readers.
And for those eagerly waiting for her next novel, Han reassured them that while it may take time, it will come.
I'd been working on a Snow Them trilogy, but the final instrument turned into something entirely different, which became We Do Not Part. Now, I must return to the trilogy and start over. Once Nobel Week ends, I plan to return a quieter life to focus on completing it.
So from winning the Man Booker International Prize in 2016 to the Nobel Prize in Literature this year, Han Kang is redefining Korea's literary legacy. What stories she will pen and what milestones she'll achieve more remain to be seen. 송유진, Arirang News, Stockholm.
On Wall Street, the tech-heavy Nasdaq closed above the 20,000 mark for the first time in its latest session as investors bet big on yet another rate cut by the Federal Reserve as U.S. consumer prices largely hover within expectations. Our Singh explains.
The tech-heavy Nasdaq saw a milestone closing on Wednesday when it rose 1.8% on the day to close at 20,034.89. This marks the first time that the index surpassed the 20,000 mark. The latest milestone was the result of a major rally led by so-called big tech firms over the past few years. The Nasdaq has risen around 90% since the index saw a sharp drop in 2022, driven by growing expectations over AI. Of the 5 major U.S. tech companies, chipmaker NVIDIA saw the biggest growth during that time, rising more than 1,100% since October 2022. The index also continued the upward momentum that followed U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's win in November. It surpassed the 19,000 mark for the first time in early November, and it took just over a month to reach Wednesday's milestone. Economists also say positive trading on the Nasdaq on Wednesday was due to the latest consumer price index data. The CPI rose 2.7% on year in November, in line with market expectations. This assured investors that the U.S. Fed is set to cut interest rates once more before the year's end.
Weren't really any surprises in today's CPI number. I think the big pivot in expectations was, several weeks ago when it looked like the path for rate cuts wasn't going to be as aggressive as the market had originally priced in. So I think that's still the big open item.
This year alone, the Nasdaq rose more than other indexes. The tech-heavy index rose 33% in 2024 compared to the S&P 500's 27% growth and the Dow Jones Industrial Average's 17% increase. 이승재, Arirang News.
Over in Morocco, this year's Africa Investment Forum proved to be an opportunity for Korea to reassess and reaffirm its investment opportunities in the continent. My colleague Shin Ha-young has details.
Africa's infrastructure demand offers an annual investment opportunity of at least $170 billion, covering energy, transport, and digital infrastructure, according to the president of the African Development Bank speaking at the Africa Investment Forum. South Korea is among the top 6 non-African countries supporting the development of sustainable and resilient infrastructure in Africa through African Development Bank Group-funded sovereign projects. One expert says infrastructure, including transport and ICT, makes up a significant part of South Korea's ODA projects in Africa.
At the Korea-Africa Summit, South Korea pledged to increase its ODA to Africa to $10 billion by 2030. Korea's ODA strategy focuses on large-scale projects aligning with Africa's need for infrastructure development to achieve its industrialization and economic integration.
AFDB Vice President for Private Sector Infrastructure and Industrialization, Solomon Coiner, highlighted the infrastructure sector as a key area where Africa could benefit from investment and trade with Korea due to Korea's focus on innovation and unique solutions.
One of the big things we want to do in Africa is to industrialize Africa. The chaebols of Korea, really, present to us what is possible, at least what is possible in a generation or two. And so the learning from that and the partnerships, joint venture partnerships, between African companies and Korean companies in that whole industrialization space.
With concerns still lingering among South Korean companies looking to expand their businesses on the continent, the AFDB has been engaging with them to better understand the specific issues in each market.
Part of what I am, here to do, and what I hope I achieved a little bit when I came to Korea, is to really talk about, our investment opportunities and challenges, but more importantly, how we can help mitigate some of this to really encourage Korean companies to not only export to Africa, but also to invest in Africa and help us grow, our industrialization base.
Meanwhile, the 3-day Africa Investment Forum in Rabat concluded after reviewing and discussing 37 investment projects across various sectors, including transport, power, energy, agribusiness, mining, and urban infrastructure. Many of the projects presented in the boardrooms received higher investor interest than estimated.
Securing $29.2 billion in investment interest, this year's Africa Investment Forum is expected to serve as another significant milestone for Africa and its partners moving forward. 신하영, Arirang News, Rabat.
In sports news, Saudi Arabia will host the 2034 FIFA World Cup. The country's bid faced no competition as it was the sole candidate. The announcement, however, has been met with condemnation from human rights groups who claim Saudi Arabia has been using sports to enhance its global image and to push attention away from its human rights violations. Now, separately, FIFA also appointed Spain, Portugal and Morocco as joint hosts for the 2030 edition.
During the daytime, Seoul rose up to 5 degrees Celsius, which is about 3 degrees lower than yesterday. And the feels-like temperatures are about 2 degrees lower than the actual readings. As the frigid winds strengthen, the weather is expected to get colder. In particular, due to the cold air, snow is forecast for the west coast tomorrow. There's a possibility that snow will expand to the Seoul metropolitan area. With snow coming, the coldest weather this winter will come around as the temperatures drop further over the weekend. The morning temperature in Seoul will plummet to -4 degrees on Saturday. Tomorrow, Seoul and Daejeon will start off at -2 degrees, Chuncheon -4 degrees. Highs will be topping out at 7 in Gwangju, Busan 9 degrees. The cold spell with cold winds will continue for a little longer until the middle of next week. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. As always, thank you for watching.
How to survive in Korea. Barbecue restaurants. Step 1. Taking care of your clothes. Put your jacket in the plastic bag. Seal it tight. If the stool flips open, store your clothes inside. Wearing light colours? Grab an apron. It's the best defence against oil splatter and smoke. Step 2. Bottomless side dishes. Basic side dishes at a barbecue restaurant. Eat and eat as much as you want. Side dishes come with free refills. Oh, and if you don't see this sign, just ask, 사장님, 여기 밑반찬 좀 더 주세요. Simple, isn't it? Step 3. Grilling meat. There are various kinds of samgyeopsal in Korea. Place the meat on the grill. Turn it over when golden. And again when it looks done. Again and again and again. Step 4. Sam style. You aren't taking bites of sam like a taco, are you? In Korea, we have it in one bite. A pro tip here. Add only as much as you can handle in a bite. Gotta avoid awkward situations. Step 5. Enjoy the perks. After the meal, enjoy the perks offered as a Korean restaurant. Fabric refreshers get rid of the barbecue smell, while mint candies freshen your breath. Did you survive the barbecue restaurant? Hang on. Are you here with someone you want to impress? Then let's skip the garlic. Who knows what will happen?
In a televised public address earlier on this Thursday morning, President Yoon Suk-yeol defended his declaration of martial law, claiming it was an act of governance and pledging to fight allegations of rebellion. Now, in response, both the ruling and opposition parties denounced his remarks in a rash of unity, raising prospects of a parliamentary vote in favor of impeachment this coming Saturday. We cover this latest event and more on Press Perspective today. Hello and welcome to yet another edition of Press Perspective for this Thursday, December 12th, here in Seoul. I'm Min San-hee. There have been a number of fresh developments in the ongoing political predicament here, and for more on the latest events, I have Kelly Kasulis-Cho with the Washington Post here in the studio. Kelly, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
I also have Andres Sanchez-Brown with EFE Spain joining us virtually. Andres, it's good to have you on.
Hi, Sonny. Always a great pleasure to be here with you. Thank you.
Right. Kelly, we'll start here in the studio. Let's begin with the President's latest remarks regarding his martial law declaration. What exactly was his message?
Well, his message was pretty much summed up in one line that he gave today when he was speaking. He said he was going to fight until the end. He does not plan to resign, it sounds like, and we're looking at an impeachment vote again, probably on Saturday. Right now is a really interesting situation because it's not clear if we have a power vacuum going on. It's not really clear, even after his speech, who is calling the shots. The government so far has appeared a little frozen. There's been several meetings canceled, revision of bills. I think the ambassador to China is stuck where he is right now because he can't be recalled formally. There's just a lot going on that makes it seem like the government is in a state of inefficiency, and it's not really clear who's calling the shots in the Blue House, if anyone at all, although according to President Yoon, it's going to be him until he's forced out of office.
Right, and against this backdrop, Andres, the opposition Democratic Party is poised to put a second impeachment motion to a vote at the Parliament this coming Saturday. That would be December 14th. What do you believe are the prospects of this vote being passed, especially keeping in mind President Yoon Suk-yeol's latest remarks to the public?
Yes, exactly. The opposition, the main opposition party, filed the motion to get President Yoon impeached yesterday, registered it today. It's due to be voted on Saturday. Now, before President Yoon's speech today, there was uncertainty regarding how many ruling party lawmakers would actually support the motion, because last Saturday, the ruling party actually boycotted it because the party had called for so-called orderly exit for Mr. Yoon, this meaning most probably that he would be stepping by himself sometime around spring. But then again, that was until today, when President Yoon spoke, and as Kelly has mentioned, he gave a rather defiant take on why he legitimately believes that he did something right by decreeing the martial law. And then minutes before that, and this is probably because the leader of the ruling party, Mr. Han Kang, had talked to Mr. Yoon, he actually said publicly that he's supporting the motion to get President Yoon impeached. Now, Mr. Han is not a lawmaker. He doesn't hold a seat in the National Assembly. But the opposition only needs 8 votes from the opposition for this motion to pass. And we already know that 7 lawmakers from the ruling party, from the PPP, have spoken out and said that they will vote for President Yoon's impeachment. So it looks very likely that the president will be actually impeached on Saturday, and that will leave it to the Constitutional Court to decide finally if he did violate the Constitution when he decreed the martial law or not.
Right. Kelly, earlier you spoke about the apparent leadership vacuum here in the country. Keeping that in mind, what do you suppose would be the broader implications of a prolonged political paralysis for Korea and its foreign policy, of course?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of concern about this right now. With the Washington Post, I did a number of interviews this week, including with the former Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs under the Moon administration. And he described, during the early days of Moon's presidency, under similar circumstances, circumstances, there was an impeachment of former President Park Geun-hye, that, foreign policy was basically in a state of paralysis for at least 2 or more months because so much needed to be wrangled together at that time. So if you listen to that, I mean, that already, given the instability of the government, suggests that foreign policy will be frozen when, if and when a new administration starts. But then, if we look at the United States, we're about to inaugurate President Trump for his next term, and he's a very different leader than Biden and brings a lot of unpredictability to this equation in terms of the U.S.-Korea alliance, in terms of military support on the peninsula, in terms of trade and the economy. And so, South Korea is in a place of jeopardy in that it might be on weak footing. South Korea is probably not on the top of President-elect Trump's agenda, but if he were to suddenly create a provocation with North Korea or engage with North Korea or want to put his foot forward on some of these universal tariffs or, again, call into question whether or not South Korea should pay high sums for U.S. troops on the peninsula. I mean, Korea's not really in the best position to react because, as I mentioned earlier, it's not even really clear who's in charge right now. There's been a lot of mixed messaging. Shortly before President Yoon came out and said he was going to fight until the end, the leader of the PPP, the People Power Party, has suggested that he was going to step down. So I think there's a lot of ambiguity. And just in the short term, if you're looking at that from the White House's perspective, I'm pretty sure that some Biden administration officials probably don't really want to engage with anyone in the Blue House because they don't know if that person is going to end up being scandal-ridden, indicted, accused of something. But also, it's not clear if those efforts are going to be best used right now when the president's trying to close up his legacy and pass on the Oval Office, and he doesn't know if anything can get done here. So in terms of U.S.-Korea relations, I think there's a real issue. There's also some potential backsliding in progress with Japan. I mean, the United States for a long time has been kind of trying to push South Korea to re-engage with Japan. They've been kind of estranged for a few years now, and there's been some success with trilateral talks. And now, if Yoon is not part of that picture, and especially if we in South Korea elect a Democratic Party candidate, if Yoon is impeached, there's some potential there that that progress has been lost or that it at least can't move forward in the coming months. And that relationship has been really critical to the Americans because they want to use it as leverage against China. So there's actually a lot that could potentially be at stake here, not only because of the immediate frozen status of the government, but also there's going to be a lot of time wasted in a transition in the White House and here, if there is a transition.
Right, and staying with concerns here, Andres, there is also quite a bit of anxiety about the possibility, about the potential of provocations by North Korea, perhaps seeking to take advantage of the political turmoil here in the country. Andres, how valid are these concerns, do you think?
Well, I'm thinking they are pretty natural concerns. Kelly just mentioned it. We don't really know right now who's in charge here. We've heard the ruling party say one thing on the weekend, saying that Prime Minister Han Kang was supposed to take over all of Mr. Yoon's duties. And then what we heard today in the president's speech was that he has no intention, apparent intention of stepping down. He said that he'll face any investigations pending on him and the impeachment vote. Mr. Yoon is technically still the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the Republic of Korea. So that concern, of course, is justified. And also we have to think that I believe it's 6 top commanders in the army right now have been removed from their posts since December 3, since the martial law was decreed and then revoked hours later. This includes ex-defense minister Kim Yong-hyun, the military counterintelligence commander Yo In-kyung. I can think of the Capital Defense Command, the Special Warfare Command. These are all basic, important units of the army. And of course, there's right now lots of questions surrounding preparation in case North Korea decides to conduct some sort of so-called provocations, obviously.
Right, and perhaps because of those concerns, Kelly, we've been told that the command of the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, Admiral Samuel Paparo, has bolstered monitoring of North Korea amid the internal instability here in South Korea. What more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I think that was sort of a standard statement to maybe ease some concerns that are going on. As an American journalist speaking to mostly an American audience, I think there's a lot of confusion about how North Korea fits into these recent events, and also how dangerous things may or may not have been during those 6 hours where martial law was declared. And so I just want to clear that up. I think, you know, when you're dealing with a country like Korea that is kind of on paper perpetually at war, anytime there's any kind of political instability or a perceived weakness in that country, of course, there's always the fear that its adversary, in this case North Korea, could see that as an opportunity to drive up tensions, to launch some kind of attack, or to kind of affect some kind of change in the dynamic with Korea and globally. From the analysts I spoke to this week, North Korea doesn't seem to have provided much indication that they're interested in doing that right now, although we have potentially months of political instability and uncertainty to come, and Trump is kind of a wild card on how quickly or if at all he'll engage North Korea. So I do think, you know, there's some reason for concern in terms of, you know, geopolitical calculations. And I think a statement like that is pretty standard in just saying that, you know, North Korea is being watched. If there's a provocation, South Korea and the United States would be prepared for it. But there's really no indication that there is any threat to bodily harm at this time. Maybe there will be some political calculations from Pyongyang or Washington in the coming months, but that remains to be seen.
Right then. So beyond concerns on the security, over the security front, Andres, I believe we have some with regard to the economy here. I'd like to highlight, Andres, an observation by Forbes regarding the latest events here in the country. Now, it reads, the high price for Yoon's selfish martial law debacle will be paid over time in installments by South Korea's 51 million people. That being said, Andres, what look to be the economic repercussions of a prolonged power turmoil here in South Korea?
Well, of course, since the martial law episode took place last week, there's been renewed talk about the so-called Korea discount, which is a concept surrounding the fact that Korea's political instability makes it a less attractive destination for investors, of course. And unfortunately, the martial law being decreed by President Yoon seems to prove that there is still a Korea discount. Korea discount also, of course, applies to the fact that South Korea is neighboring a country ruled by a military dictatorship, and that it technically is at a state of war. But of course, this unexpected episode that took place last week has increased the number of uncertainties surrounding and the challenges surrounding the Korean economy right now. If you think about it, 2025 for Korea wasn't looking all that good. It was kind of an uphill scenario with the economy slowing, and already many people pointing out that President Yoon doing half of his mandate hasn't really been able to tackle any of the major issues that the economy is facing, like record low fertility rates, household debt, gender pay gap, which is the largest among developing countries, or the fact that he hasn't tackled, pretty much like any of his predecessors, the excessive power that chaebols hold in the economy, right? And as Kelly once again just put it, Trump is going to become the president of the United States in around a month, and he is indeed a wild card, not only in terms of security issues, but also on the economic front. He's been talking about all sorts of tariffs up and down. He's also pointed out to the possibility of asking for more money from Korea to cover the costs of 28,500 troops, American troops being deployed on Korean soil. And of course, you don't want a so-called dead man walking government to have to face this scenario, right? Now, of course, the fact that President Yoon might get impeached on Saturday certainly seems to clear the way a little bit more and improve that perspective of maybe a new government taking power in Korea soon. But we'll have to see also, because impeachments, as we know, the Constitutional Court has up to 180 days to deem if Mr. Yoon has to be impeached. So we still have, there's a lot of developments that we have to wait and assess yet.
Right, especially since the president himself has claimed he will challenge any decision with regard to impeachment or to find him guilty of rebellion. Speaking of Mr. Trump, Kelly, now, prior to his return to the White Office, there has been talk about the second Trump administration seeking perhaps direct dialogue with North Korea. The concern here within South Korea is that the country itself may be sidelined from these interactions between Washington and Pyongyang. And given the political vacuum here in the country, prospects are looking quite high so that these concerns may become a reality. What are your thoughts regarding that?
Yeah, I think that's a real concern. I mean, the United States is certainly a close partner with South Korea and will hopefully include them in those conversations. But, you know, when we last looked at this kind of unilateral decision to provoke and then engage with North Korea that we saw in the previous Trump administration, that felt very out of step. It felt a little unprecedented. It felt like a wild card move at the time, but it was met with the forces of President Moon Jae-in, who was very, very interested in engaging with the North and very involved and really asserted himself in that equation and carried that through, honestly, to the end of his term to his best ability. Now, we don't even know who's going to be in power in a few months in South Korea, and depending on who that is, engagement with the North is either going to be very appealing or very much not. You know, the conservatives in South Korea tend to not be pro-engagement. I mean, North Korea was even used sort of as a pretext of national security to impose this martial law. And there's some kind of Cold War era speech that's been thrown around, kind of branding people who are pro-engagement as pro-North and communist, which is kind of a legacy of the polarization of Korean politics anyway. But my point is simply that, you know, do I think that the United States would want to engage with North Korea without any consultations with the South? I think that would be a very bad look. But is Korea on stable footing to deal with an issue like that? Maybe not. And then we also have this unpredictable figure who kind of has this playbook of creating problems and then fixing them as a matter of, you know, having a victory for public perception. So I do think there's some legitimate concern here. Again, North Korea may not be at the top of President Trump's agenda, or it might be a good ploy to get some support immediately in office. I have no idea. And there are certainly other issues as well where Korea needs to have stable footing and may not. When we look at how Trump dealt with the Korea-U.S. free trade agreement, that was really early in his office. And in the end, I mean, basically the agreement that they renegotiated looked almost exactly the same as the original one. But that was really because of the tireless effort of South Korean negotiators who were prepared and unified on dealing with this. And it's not clear if that will happen if there's political instability at home. And it's not clear if that pressure from the South Korean populace is going to exist like it did before if we're distracted with domestic politics as well.
Right. So much uncertainty as we speak. Andres, generally speaking, Korea's political turmoil has been making much global headlines. How do you explain the global media interest in Korea's domestic affairs?
Well, I guess the initial interest was basically the same that many of us had here. Why is this happening? Korea is right now a soft power reference worldwide. It's a country that people look up to in terms of culture, for example. Well, we can think of the second season of Squid Game being premiered this week, and it hasn't even been released on platforms yet on Netflix, and it already got an Emmy nomination. So I think that's a pretty good benchmark of the kind of global interest that Korea sparks right now. So everybody was kind of baffled to find out that there was suddenly martial law being implemented in the middle of the night. And there still remains a lot of answers that we are still waiting for. Why was what motivated all this scheme, and also I think what's drawn a lot of interest is the fact that there's been lots of changes of direction in the past week regarding the ruling party and the president himself. Last Sunday, after the motion for having him impeached was boycotted, he signaled that he was going to leave his destiny in the hands of the party. And then today he came out and said that, well, he didn't say that he had the intention of stepping down, clearly, and that he would face any challenge coming up his way. So I think people are still going to be paying lots of close attention to what happens in Korea in the next few days.
Right, especially on Saturday, December 14th, where we have a second vote on his impeachment motion. All right, Andres, as always, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts, Andres. And Kelly here in the studio, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Right, well, that ends our Thursday edition of Press Perspective. We return same time tomorrow with more talk on the mounting political fallout from South Korea's short-lived martial law early last week. Thank you for now.